Assalamu alaikum everyone. Assalamu alaikum Adeeba. How are you?
Walaikum Assalam. Yes, I'm good. Thank you, Farheen. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and we are back again with our online session series. And today is the last session of the month of November. And to conduct this, we have Dr. Adeeba Ahmed, who is the PhD Higher Education, University of Surrey, Guildford, Surrey, UK. She's an associate lecturer at Buckinghamshire New University, UK. And she's also the founder of PhD Help Online, and she's an expert in intercultural citizenship education through foreign language teaching and learning. And today the topic is developing intercultural citizenship through language teaching. So over to you, Dr. Adeeba Ahmed.
Yes, thank you, Farheen, so much for having me. And it's an honor to end the month with this topic as well. So, really glad that I'm here and talking to the lovely teachers here. Yeah, without further ado, I think I should just start and head straight to it. Let me just first bear with me, please. I will share the screen. Yeah.
We can't see your screen.
Just a minute.
Yeah, it's coming now. Yes.
Okay, great. And I can do this mode here. This one. All good?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So yes, as Farheen mentioned, today's topic is going to be on language teaching, but taking a little slightly different stance on language teaching, which is like through our language classrooms, how can we develop intercultural citizenship? Right. So, if we look at the theory behind it, Michael Byram is the one who has developed a framework for teaching intercultural citizenship through language classrooms. So, so the what Byram says is that basically the purpose of education is definitely to develop a critical perspective, but also incur a willingness to take action, and that's how the link is created with the citizenship education. So the goal is actually to make the students, from passive language learners to active intercultural citizens. And in today's day and age, I think it's even more important where the whole world is becoming close knitted, and there's more access around the globe for all the young people and everyone alike, and the teachers as well. So there's a lot of global movement, and mobility is increased. So that's why I think it's quite pertinent to have some of the ideas about making our classrooms more adaptable to bringing in this change in our students. So the focus will be on developing critical cultural awareness and not just, telling them about a certain culture. So there will be, as you can guess, a lot of reflexivity exercises as well, which we will have a look at. So what teachers need to learn is, if we look at literature, so we learn that teachers should be trained to help students uncover the emotional barriers, because whenever there are two contrasting, even similar cultures, when they come, there is some negotiation that needs to take place, right? So one of the parties can be out of your comfort zone, so it requires the emotional, it triggers emotions, right? So there must be some emotional barriers. So how to, the teachers have to be a little more aware and sensitive to those, so in the classroom, so as to avoid any unpleasant, if you like, issues. And and then also how to develop reflexivity in the students, and then facilitate active intercultural dialogue. So while theory is strong in this, that as I'm showing you, quite a lot of people have written about it, but practical models still remain, limited. And that is why I'm quite interested in that, and I have tried out a few of the activities in line with the theory, but taking a practical step to it as well, and see how it goes. Why intercultural citizenship? If because it would this language classroom would have what I call four elements to it. So the activities should be generated keeping in mind these four broader areas, which is like development of the experiential learning techniques. So through the experiential learning techniques, we can include intercultural citizenship, and also through reflective and emotionally aware classroom activities. The third can be a performed culture exercises. I think this is always a hit in our classrooms when we have the role plays. Yeah. And then the negotiation of cultural differences. This is like a seminar setting where you sit in circles and discuss, right? But that has to come later on, once they have experienced and reflected and performed, right? So that's how it will progress. And I will show you the main purposes and also the exact activities that we can include. So if we look at the activity one, which I call moving toward the other, it is based on the experiential movement based activity. So you need to have to think about the classroom and move the chairs maybe a little bit, so that all the rest of the students sit on the sides of the classroom, and in the middle you can have a table. So it will have three phases. The phase one is going to be speaking to the cultural object from far away. So the teacher needs to plan which cultural object she's going to bring, right? So for example, it doesn't always have to be an object. If that is too difficult, you can even show a picture or an image, right? But the goal is that the students are far away from it, and then asking them questions. I will show you in the next slide how we do that. And then phase two is going to be moving to the midpoint, and then the reflection phase. The phase three is going to be sitting beside the object and sharing what you actually feel, what you are feeling at that moment, right? And obviously every activity has to end with a reflection, which will bring out the emotions and also the physical responses, because this is all about experiencing through all the five senses. Okay. So the example for this activity one, which I call moving toward the other, is that the materials are just as I said, and an object or a photo or experience. The purpose is to help students experience the emotional and any cognitive shifts during the all three phases. So where they started off and what they learned right at the end through the shifts in the proximity with that object. All right. So if we look at phase one, that is the far distance one, the participant, they would speak from the far end of the object, right? And they will, what they will speak about, they will talk about the assumptions about the cultural other. So for example, they might be saying, for example, what I had in my class was a picture and an object also of Chinese origins, where they are standing in the line or something, they're queuing up for to go on the metro station, right? And they said, so they probably follow a lot of rules. So they would think of that, personify it, and then they would say that, personify the object and talk to it directly and say, oh, so you follow a lot of rules there. Or someone might say, depending on the object that you have there, your festivals must be totally different from ours. So if you show a wedding scene, and then that sparks that assumption. So tell the students, the instructions have to be very clear, that at this stage they only have to tell whatever assumptions they feel about the other. Now we come to the phase two, which is the mid distance. They move a little closer, and then they reassess what they said before and think about it. And maybe they will say, oh, maybe my earlier view was too simplistic, or it was a generalized statement, or I now see some similarities with your festivals as well. Now, then in the third phase, you make each student come and sit next to the object or closer to the image, where you are going to ask them to recall the real intercultural encounters. So basically, they might say that, oh, I misunderstood something, and then maybe sometimes you are also not very strict with the rules, or a Chinese visitor might you might say that, oh, they read my politeness differently. They thought that maybe I'm too soft. So that was exactly what my one of my students said. So kind of like reassessing and recalling their interaction. Then it would end with a reflective phase where you will ask these questions: that what were the emotional shifts they felt, what were the cognitive changes, and how students experience distant versus close others. So what they basically, what it would encourage is that whenever they see, for example, anything on media, on social media, they would not just, or hear any news, they would not just make assumptions. Even if they do, which is natural, they are going to reassess it and reflect on them. All right, and maybe they come to a conclusion, maybe they find a shift in themselves. Now, the activity two, which I called about that, so that activity one was on experiential, through experiential learning. The activity two is going to be on the performed culture. All right, they will enact a scenario. So, kind of like role play, contrasting cultural communication norms. So, a sample scenario can be disagreeing with authority. In some cultures, that's completely normal. So, culture A is like direct questioning is respectful and it's not considered as very rude. In culture B, it could be indirect communication shows respect, which is more like, our kind of culture. So the students perform, then they debrief their emotional responses. The example of this performed culture scenario enactment is obviously they experience the norms through going through the process of it, right? So there you might need to prepare some scripts or role cards for the students. Context could be, according to the Pakistani context, if you look at like the scenario, you can say that, the student did not get the expected grade that he or she was expecting. And the roles, there will be two sets of students. One is, very direct in saying and conversing with the teacher, and the other student is indirect culture, right? So if we look at the example, you can give to the student direct, with the direct method. The student can upfront say, I don't agree with this grade. Yeah. And the teacher, obviously a Pakistani teacher, if that is, would be saying, maybe there was some misunderstanding, so kind of like taking it that indirect route. Or the other one could say, I'd like specific feedback, and the teacher can respond perhaps later would be better. So the debrief is going to be really important in this, because which role felt natural, uncomfortable, and this is where the students will really start to share their emotions, their feelings, or their maybe perhaps shyness in taking the direct role, right? Because they're not used to it. So they'll be out of their comfort zone in saying this. And even if it is only a role play, but there might be some hindrance there. So how does this relate to the student communication styles? You can talk about that. And how does English affect expectations? Because we are also going to be talking about the foreign language use. So you can ask questions that, how would have you asked the same question in your own language, in Urdu, or maybe your mother tongue, in Punjabi, Gujarati, whatever. So also, making them think about and drawing parallels between their repertoire of languages, because in Pakistan we are a very multilingual nation. Now, extra scenarios for teachers for this activity can be refusing an invitation, giving feedback, apologizing across the cultures, or in some cases, working with foreign NGO volunteers. It's quite popular with the older students, probably. Now, the activity three could be what I call reflection, but it's a nice name. I think assumption archaeology. So, like the archaeologists, they uncover the hidden meaning behind things. So, the reflection is kind of like a lot of time it is portrayed as a reflection of the mirror or things like that. But what I find more powerful is the actual, finding the truth behind the thing, so digging deep like the archaeologists. So it's a fun name. And here it would develop critical reflection methods. So you list three normal cultural practices, ask the students to do that, then identify the hidden values behind, because whatever we do, it is value based, right? It comes from your experiences and values that you carry. Then the questioning could be, why is it normal? What judgments arise? And then analyze the internalized cultural assumptions. So why do they hold it, or why do I hold it? So the example for this critical reflection could be reveal the hidden values, and you can just do it with worksheets. So when I said list three normal practices, the examples could be removing shoes, for example. So what does it show? If it is the act of removing shoes before you enter the house, it shows respect, it shows cleanliness. Or the other normal practice could be standing up for elders, or leaving a space in the bus for the or females or older generation, or older people, right? So it shows there is the hierarchy that is maintained, and it might seem to be a respectful thing to do. And then indirect refusals, right? So it shows it is done so that the harmony is maintained, and it comes out as a respect. So the partner question would be, why is this normal? What might confuse others? If you stand up for the elders all the time, would it confuse others? And what values underlie these judgments? So it could be like, maybe some other cultural teen might not stand for elders, and that to me sounds rude, for example. The students might be talking and discussing about that, and then the other gets the chance to clarify and step into the shoes of the other, and then think from their perspective as well. So obviously, just like all the other two activities, this one also ends with a critical analysis, where you would reflect and you say, have I questioned it before? Where did this value come from? Okay, and how might the diverse Pakistani students interpret it? There could be other adaptations. So you can ask which of your practices would confuse. So, for example, your own cultural practices would confuse the others. For example, in Turkey or in Malaysia, which Pakistani groups' practices confuse you, perhaps because we are multi-ethnic. So the last activity, activity 4, is what I call designing contact zone projects. This is the heart of intercultural citizenship, where we talk about action. So action and engagement opportunities must be created. So for example, identifying diverse local communities. Then the teacher can design simple service learning or dialogue projects, or plan student reflection components. So maybe kind of like cultural storytelling, rather than refugee interviews in Pakistani scenario. So the example could be moving from just understanding in the classroom to opening it up to the society and taking action. So material would be some templates. So templates can look like the examples could be that the students go talk to people maybe from Afghan, Hazaras, Chinese workers, if they find people from Christian Hindu minorities in Pakistan or Gilgit-Baltistani students. So basically, you will have these four levels where the students talk about. I'll quickly show. I'm conscious of time as well. So you can talk about community. So for example, it was Afghan refugees. Task is that the student interview the nanwalas, the shopkeepers, right? And the skills that they will be developing is questioning, summarizing, and intercultural citizenship would be developing empathy for them and then perspective taking. Yeah. And then action can be then later on they develop the kindness posters. So whatever they found out. So you can choose the reflection design for this is going to be maybe they start, you tell them to have a learning journal. They can have a photo of that and caption it, or maybe sit in a circle in a storytelling and each one says what they found out, or they just give them a line, one new thing that I learned, and then they talk about it through with reflection. So the key takeaway of this session is that the teachers need to become intercultural citizens themselves before they can effectively guide the students, and to show that how language teachers can effectively bridge the gap between the traditional language teaching, which is on skills and grammar, and the more transformative approach of intercultural citizenship education. Now, this is just an extra bit of thing that you must be thinking, how are we going to assess? And so everything is not for assessing, that's one thing. But having said that, there are rubrics like this, where beginning, development, professional, advanced levels, and all the three major aspects belonging to the intercultural citizenship are mentioned, and the rubric can be used. So, for example, a little bit I can show you very quickly is the experiential exercises. You can track the emotional response levels of the students during while they are acting upon it, and inside documentation. So, if was there any aha moment that the student shared in the journals, and if you notice any modified interactional behaviors. So for the performed culture activities, you can look for the authenticity assessment, so peer evaluation of cultural role performance. Empathy measurement can be done through written reflections again, walking in the other's shoes, as I mentioned earlier, and flexibility indicators can be measured through ability to switch between the cultural perspectives. The critical reflection, the tool can be assumption identification tools. So the students list and analyze their biases and question quality, the depth and sophistication of cultural questions that the students were asking each other, and also the reasoning, what examples they were using to support their cultural analysis. For the last activity, community engagement activity, it could be pre-engagement. You can assess the cultural goal setting preparation, and during the engagement, they can have the reflection logs and mentor feedback can be given on them. And post engagement is the impact analysis and future action planning. So, what they want to do for the future after that. And feedback, as we know, with assessment is an integral part of learning. So, individual feedback can be monthly, written, goal setting sessions, peer feedback, extremely important, useful, and also self assessment, where they regularly self evaluate using the competence indicators. So goal revision can be done as well. And these are some of the references. And thank you. And I would stop sharing. So I'm open to questions. Yeah. Yes. So if there are any questions, Fareen, maybe And if we are short of time, don't worry, just pop the questions in the chat. Maybe later on Farheen can send me and I can email the responses.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Adeeba. And I'm going to now paste the certificate link in the chat box.
Mhm.
All right, here is the certificate link.